Hi everyone, my name is Melissa. I'm going to be presenting on the particular pieces of papyri that I found within the website. Most all of these are found in Oxyrhynchus itself. Um, I kind of took a different approach to this project. Um, I personally adore history, and I think that it is a deeper analysis on human nature itself. And I often get, people in this time say, "Oh, I was born in the wrong era," or people have gotten worse as we begin to learn more and evolve. But I think that one thing that is pretty clear is that human nature is complex, but people don't really change too much. Um, Sometimes our values can alter, and sometimes uh, we go through enlightenment um, periods, but people seldom change from their selfish nature. I don't think that people are innately bad or good, but we can get into that philosophical debate for days and days. I think that people are simply self-interested, whether it be with good cause or good intentions, or it be with ones that are innately evils at times. So let's get into it. The first piece of papyri that I did find was an oracle question. Oftentimes within the Greco-Roman world, people would petition the oracle in order to find out about their future or to find out if making certain decisions were to their benefit. This was within Hellenic Greece. This was done in the city of Delphi. And the believers thought that they were petitioning Apollo himself through the use of the oracle's Pythia, which they believed would be possessed by the spirit of Python, the great snake that was a son of Gaia that Apollo slain. And so, in order to kind of atone for that, he had to replace Python with his divination. So, within this letter or this petition, it does want to know if buying a slave girl would be better for their needs, or would simply borrowing her be better for them in the long run, which we do know that back in the Greco-Roman times, slaves were viewed as property. There is seldom a time within really any of history where slaves are treated with utter fairness. And this is just an example that, the needs and wants of this patron way outweigh whatever consideration for this girl that there is. The purpose of buying her could be nefarious. It could be that they need some extra hands around their house, but knowing what we do know about human nature, knowing what we do know about Greco-Roman times, your humanity as a slave was just entirely disregarded. You could be sold to anybody. You could be used by anybody that your master told you to go and do. This next one's a bit more humorous and a little lighthearted in comparison to the other. This letter is written by a husband who wants to annul his marriage. He is complaining that his wife has exceeded his financial resources, and he is dissatisfied with their union. And so he would like to return her to her family and her father, but he wants compensation for what she supposedly stole. So by this papyri, there are some pieces that are unfortunately left a mystery, so we don't know precisely what she stole, but we do know that one of the items is worth 40 drachma. And 40 drachma was a big deal considering that most artisans and laborers only received about a drachma a day for their work wages. And so her stealing an item that is worth 40 drachma was crime in this young man's eyes. And so this is kind of similar to how modern marriage annulments kind of go about, where one person is usually blaming the other and saying, well, I tried everything, but they just didn't change or they just wouldn't listen, and so on and so forth. We don't really get the other person, in this case, the wife's perspective. He could have been very cruel and very terrible. But I do think, even in this humorous light, that this does kind of show the selfishness of both the wife and the husband in this marriage arrangement. The next one that I have is probably the worst of the insinuations. Again, we don't know the context of this letter, but it is written by two men to another man, petitioning him to do a lewd act with him, so that way they no longer bully and harass him. And it's followed by male genitalia on the side, which, again, this is uh, within a different context. This could be found within a middle schooler's notebook of friends teasing each other with locker room talk. But what I do know about a little bit of Roman slang is that the term bugger was not a kind one, and it was not one that really insinuated consent, especially in the Roman Empire. Homosexuality was something that was common. It was accepted to an extent, depending on if the party was more dominant or more submissive, because masculinity was very important. You have these very, very, very prevalent gods that are hypermasculine, like Mars and Jupiter. And so being able to be the one who is dominant in this military S type of societal empire is important. And so, sometimes people ask, like, why do you study stuff like this? And it's not necessarily out of joy or interest. It's because Ephroditus was a person, and the slave girl was a person. And even though some may say it's 2,000 years too late, they're preserving their humanity is important. Um, Not remembering them as victims, but as people is important. And so I do think, even though this part of humanity is quite dark and quite disturbing to look at, it is important to be self-aware of. So the last letter that I found was a letter of consolation, which you would think right off the bat, whoa, how is this like dark? How is this selfish? And knowing the context of how grief was portrayed within the Greco-Roman world is kind of mirrors how Western society really uh, views grief and everything. It's quite a performance, especially with the introduction to social media. There is quite a uh, need to show that, oh man, like we also are grieving these people too. And it seems like this Irene is exactly doing that, saying that, oh, I did everything that was fitting to serve the deceased, and even my friends did it. And so you can rest assured. It's very similar to people saying, oh, I send you my blessings and prayers and hopes and thoughts. It's nice, but you wonder the genuineness of it in comparison to other letters, one being in our textbook by Cicero, um, who writes to his friend who lost his young daughter. And the way that he talks about her is one of great respect and great sorrow that she's no longer going to be singing in his house, and that she was quite the lovely young lady. It seems a bit more personal than this letter that Irene does address to her two friends. Again, we don't know the context of it, but it would be quite interesting to see how close these three were, and how much of a performance the grief is and how much of it is genuine. Once again, I want to thank you guys for listening to my presentation. There definitely are aspects to it that were quite dark and quite disturbing, but I do think that it is important to better understanding ourselves and ceasing to commit the same selfish acts. Uh, try as we might, human nature is quite complex. Thanks.